Hello and welcome to the Innovative Education Expert Panel. I'm so happy and excited to be here today with all of these beautiful, empowering, and inspiring women who are leaders in education, pioneers, have been for years. And I'm excited to really dive into a conversation and discussion about the education system, what it looks like now and where we're at and what we're moving into for the future. I'm interested in sharing the perspectives of these women with you and really exploring what the future of education could look like and will look like for children of the new earth and who we're really serving with the work that we're doing here today. So thank you so much for tuning in and being here with me. My name is Emily Cleland. I am the founder and director of Consciousness for Kids and also the leader for the Innovative Parenting Collective. And I'm so happy to be the host and just facilitating and guiding this expert panel with these beautiful women. I will just do a short introduction of everyone so you all get to know each other and our viewers get to know who you are, and then we'll dive into some great conversation. So first off, we have the beautiful Marisa Ferrera, and Marisa began her career over 40 years ago as an early childhood educator. As she continued her studies, completing both a Bachelor of Education and Master of Education degree, she went on to teach in the public elementary school system for several years. In 2001, Marisa founded and operated a holistic private school for 6 years. One of her passions over the years has been to support both children and adults in handling conflict in ways that lead to greater peace and a deeper connection with others. She is now an empowerment coach and mentor, helping both men and women create healthy boundaries and relationships with their families so that they can live in peace and joy. And Marisa is also the #1 best-selling author of a book called Magnify Your Magnificence, Your Pathway to the Life and Relationships You Truly Desire. And you can learn more about Marisa by visiting her website at magnifyyourmagnificence.com. So, Marisa, did you wave and just let everyone know who you are?
I'm here.
Okay.
My name was there, so I thought they would be able to find me. But yes,
Okay.
Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Great. You're so welcome. And next up, we have Alexandra. And Alex, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, so forgive me. How do I pronounce it?
Okay.
How do I pronounce your last name?
It's Tsamis.
Tsamis?
Yeah.
Okay.
You
so
don't
we have
pronounce the T.
Okay. So Alexandra, thank you. So Alexandra Tsamis, and Alexandra has been a long-standing passionate advocate of Maria Montessori's learning methods. She is supported by her background in early childhood development, a trained Montessori educator, and a postgraduate in special needs. Alexandra is also trained in holistic psychotherapy. Alexandra is the founder and director of Sunflower Montessori School since 2005 and Oakwood Village Montessori since 2016. As a mother of 3 children, her own Montessori platforms are designed with such balance at the heart and place an equal emphasis on the child's intellectual, psychological, physical, moral, and spiritual development. She is a Waldorf parent who also worked with early years department to get it up and running and licensed. She's a consultant for the CCMA, Canadian Council of Montessori Administrators, and also provides workshops for parents on the Montessori curriculum and behavior guidance. So welcome, Alex. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
So happy to have you. And next up, we have Kim Southerland. So
Hi.
Kim. Kim is an educational therapist with over 25 years experience. In 1996, she received her master's degree with distinction in educational psychology. Since then, Kim has worked in schools, learning centers, hospital settings, and private practice. Grounded in a traditional background of neuroscience and evidence-based programs, Kim combines her professional training with intuitive gifts. She is an empath, psychic medium, and light language channel, as well as a student of numerology, astrology, and dream work for the past 20 years. So Kim has devoted her career to developing an integrative approach that addresses the singularity and empowerment of every child. As a mother of 2 children herself, Kim has experienced both the traditional route of mainstream education, as well as educating a child who loves learning yet feels uninspired to learn in the school system. She is uniquely situated to help children and families navigate the limitations of a one-size-fits-all education model, while providing the bridge to embrace a new paradigm in education that allows each child's innate gifts to be fostered. Kim currently works in private practice in Los Angeles, California. She specializes in a wide range of learning abilities with a special focus on highly sensitive, empathic, intuitive, and twice exceptional children. So welcome, Kim.
Thank you.
Man, I could be here all day
That was a
reading
lot.
all of your credentials. So next up, we have Hope Macleod, and Hope is an intuitive healer and teacher. So welcome, Hope.
Thank you.
So Hope is an intuitive healer, spiritual teacher, and loving mother. Since she was young, Hope has had a clear sense of the sacred and connection to the divine. She has nearly 20 years of training and experience in the healing arts, including non-duality, women's mysteries, theta healing, shamanism, and the Christic energy system. Much of her practice is devoted to supporting women and the new generation of children and youth. As a child, she had a similar awareness and vibration as in the children today. And for the past 16 years as a telepathic mother and the raising of a highly intuitive and sensitive child, she has developed a deep appreciation for holistic education, simplicity parenting, and the needs of this new generation. Most keenly, she has understood the gaps that even current holistic education models have in the meeting of children in our awakening world. Hope believes that to be seen and understood in who one truly is everything. She believes our educational systems are not fully rising to the potentiality that exists within our youngest generation, and the new paradigm is being called for. Hope has a strong commitment to the evolution of consciousness and the awakening of humanity to its true light nature. Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
And Judy, last but not least, Judy Lipson. Judy Lipson believes that there are no lazy students, only individuals who have not fully realized their potential. She works with public and private schools and directly with families and students, including those with attention deficit disorders, autism spectrum disorders, work or school-related anxiety, and learning disabilities and unconventional learning styles. In her 30-year career, Judy held many positions within Troy schools, including self-contained classrooms for the emotionally impaired, resource room teacher, teacher consultant, and student services counselor. Her career included work in elementary, middle, and high school, providing direct instruction as well as consultation with general education teachers and students. During that time, she was nominated for the Teacher of the Year award by a parent and her colleagues. Judy has presented at numerous conferences as well as for community organizations, parent groups, and professional organizations. She served as a board member of Wisdom, which stands for Women's Interfaith Solutions for Dialogue and Outreach in Metro Detroit, and is currently a board member for the Greater West Bloomfield Community Coalition for Youth. So that is a pretty epic lineup, if you ask me. Thank you, Judy, for being here, and everyone. So lovely to have you. So I have the pleasure and blessing of being connected with so many beautiful people. And it's just been kind of an ongoing part of the work that I do to bring everybody together in one setting and to share what you all have to offer with each other and with the world. And so I feel very blessed to be connected with all of you, and so grateful that you all were yes to coming together, because I feel like, energetically speaking, when we come together like this and we connect with each other at this level, we're creating a very important geometry or geometrical structure that then creates an energetic foundation for what it is that we're envisioning and what we're bringing into and birthing into the world at this time. So I feel like these conversations and just connecting in this way is a very important step towards creating the new paradigm and the new earth, and everything that I know that we've all been envisioning for a very long time. So very honored and grateful to have you all. So I guess, what I'm going to do is, I don't have any like really specific questions. I want to know, and how we can do this is just whoever feels most inspired or inclined to answer a question, you can just raise your hand, or, and then we can go from person to person. And after, so yeah, basically I'm going to start with having each of you kind of share a little bit about yourselves and what inspired you to do the work that you're doing. If you want to share a little bit about the work that you've done and that you do, that would be great. And then we'll go from there. We'll move into discussing more about like what we're envisioning for the future and what we can expect to see in the coming in the near future for education, and then maybe even like zoom out a little bit and see where we can go from there. So I do have some interesting topics to discuss, but right now I'd just love to hear from all of you about just what you've been up to in the world, what inspired you to move into the world of alternative or holistic education, and what is it that you're doing right now that's really like getting you excited. So if one of you wants to start, we can just go through you.
I'll go first. A lot of times people are afraid to go first, but I don't mind.
Okay, great.
I'm one of the oldies anyways. So yeah, what inspired me? I was teaching, as you mentioned, in the publicly funded system for a number of years. And when I first started, I mean, in the whole area of education, I was just ecstatic. I mean, it was my passion, it was my love. And I would, brag to all my friends and family, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. It was just such a pleasure to go to work every day. And I remember in my earlier years, people would say, well, the best teachers always leave. And I said, well, I'm going to be one of the best and I'm never leaving. And that's what I really believed to be true at that time, because I thought, why would I leave? I love it. I've got so much room to grow and expand. I can change grades. I can, move into management, whatever. It just felt like it was going to be my entire career in the publicly funded system. But fast forward about 10 or 11 years into it, and I found myself experiencing burnout. And I thought burnout only happened to people who didn't like their jobs. So it really shocked me to experience it. And what I discovered as I started getting some help around, what was really going on for me, was that there was just too much of a discrepancy between what I felt intuitively was needed in terms of education and what I was being mandated to provide. And so that gap just started getting louder and bigger, and I was just having a harder and harder time dealing with it. And so I did my best within, my four walls to do what I could to provide a holistic environment for my students, but I was still limited because of, all the political requirements and everything I had to do, including the grading, which really disturbed me. I did not like doing report cards because I didn't like the way they were designed. They were very disempowering for the students. I did my best, to do them in a way that would be empowering, but I also, had to follow the status quo. So I decided, just through a lot of soul searching, that I was going to just quit my job, which was a huge decision to make because teaching's a secure position, and I left my marriage the same year. So it was like really jumping off a cliff without having a clue what was next. But I just felt that was what I needed to do. But I would always talk about education to anybody who would listen. I'd get on my soapbox and talk about, we need to do this and we need to do that and blah, blah, blah. And one day when I was on that soapbox, I kept saying, when is somebody going to, fill in the blank? And what I heard one day was, when are you going to fill in the blank? And it really stunned me because I thought, well, who, me? I'm not, what am I supposed to do, right? Anyway, it took a while, but I did start my own school with the vision of providing what I thought children deserved, a holistic environment that really nurtured their spirit your soul, and focused on the emotional and social development as a priority, not just when problems happen. And so that's what led me to starting my school, and that's what inspired me. And even though I'm not doing the school anymore, I think I was ahead of my time. It was very difficult to maintain the school financially, so I did close it down after 6 years with a very heavy heart. However, I'm very excited to see that the things that I was envisioning way back in 2001 when I started the school are starting to become more of a reality now. So that's why I agreed to join the panel, even though I'm not currently running a school or even in education per se. I'm working more on the inner child of adults at the moment, but there's a lot of parallels there too. But that is what inspired me to focus on the holistic child.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And as somebody who's following in your footsteps, I just want to say thank you very much for pioneering that way for me and for those of us who are going to come, because I know that was almost 20 years ago when you did that, and that was definitely, ahead of your time. And I just really honor your courage and what that took, and your bravery in all the steps that you took at that time, and just creating what you created, because like I said, that's making it possible and easier for me and for other people, those of us who have the same vision. So I really appreciate what you did in your role, and also definitely want to talk more with you a little bit about the kind of things that you implemented at your school. That I know we had a interview before, and you discussed customized curriculum and how that affected the children. And so I know that that's something that might be coming down the pipe in the future. So that's definitely an interesting topic that we can touch on later. So thank you, Marisa, for sharing that. It's very beautiful.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Who next?
I'll jump in.
Okay, go ahead, Judy.
So similar but different to Marisa, as probably everybody could say. Mine has been kind of a parallel journey of self-discovery and remembering who I am, simultaneously to learning about who I am via the kids that I was working with in the schools. And so I worked, my original certification was to teach the emotionally impaired, because I had always wanted to be a therapist, but didn't think I could, thought the whole PhD program was quite daunting and didn't want to go there. Ended up with a master's in counseling, and so I'm providing therapy now. And then I also provide a mix of academic strategies and supports for the schools, the parents, the kids themselves. But the journey to getting to this point was that journey of remembering who I really am. As I was really meeting the kids, and I'm finding out when they're coming and talk to me, and the kids would always open up, and I primarily worked high school, so I had very verbal kids who were more verbal. And I would talk to them about why they were struggling. And oftentimes they would tell me, well, I can't concentrate, I can't focus, I'm really worried about my friend. My friends are always there talking to me, they tell me everything. And little by little, I began to recognize these kids as being sensitive, highly attuned to one or more of the 5 senses. And then I began to realize that that's just the next step to being intuitive and empathic. And as I'm learning all that, I'm realizing that's me too. And able to see my own kids who I was raising at the time. And I have 3 adult children, and I have 5 grandchildren. And so it's been that kind of journey. And then I realized that my main role it's kind of shifting right now, but to be the translator, so that I can go into school meetings and help the parents to understand what the educators are saying, because sometimes it just doesn't make sense to them, and help the educators to understand this specific child. And I began more and more to realize that my role here is translator, helping all kinds of professionals. So Emily mentioned I've done a lot of presentations, school social worker groups, counselors, educators, parents. I've worked with a couple of medical practices, and I really see it as translator, so that they can understand who are these kids who seem to think and act and respond differently, and let's normalize it, and let's identify the gifts that come with it instead of the finger pointing of, oh no, they're not doing this right, and those kinds of things. And then this new shift, which is, I think, still super, super related, but it's so interesting to me. I've been on this whole transformative process as an individual for myself, and seeing other people as they go through transformative practices and journeys. But what was really mind-boggling to me is, as we entered this whole social distancing, I affectionately call it the lockdown, because I'm now working from my home and so many people are working in social distancing, is that everything right now is less about sensitives, although it totally still is, and it's more about transformation. I mean, it's like everywhere that I see now is the transformative journey. And I've always seen it, as you've talked, Emily, this is your group. These kids who I always called sensitives, and certainly adults who've come before them, myself included. But we are here for this transformative process. And everything that I can do to ease their journey, because mine was not easy. Nobody understood me. Nobody knew who I was, what I was, and I had to reclaim it. And every time I get to sit with a student, I work with all ages, but every time I get to sit with a student particularly, and they pick it up so quickly, and I get to make it feel okay, it's like giving back to my own inner child, I think. And it's really helpful for me because I really see that I'm helping them. So there'll probably be more later.
Amazing. Wow.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, Judy. That is so true. And I feel like with the work that I'm doing the same thing. It's like we're all just like kind of trying to make the journey easier than we had it for the younger generations. And yeah, I think that's a brilliant insight that as we assist with the younger generations and helping each person to be seen, we're giving that to ourselves as well. So I really appreciate that work that you're doing in the world. So thank you.
Thank you. And I love, Emily, how you, at the very beginning of this, you talked about this might be more of a laying down of the foundational grid for our kids, even more than this conversation that's occurring with whoever parents or professionals are either on board today or are going to be listening in the future, because we are all energetic healers. And I love that we've got this synergy going that's going to make this happen and be created.
What's that?
I said, I can feel my voice tightening. And I'm like, that's chakra, calm down. You're okay, you're safe.
Yeah,
it's
okay.
all right.
It's okay.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I appreciate you sharing that and just being open and vulnerable, because, you know, it does take something to really step out and share these things, our experience and our gifts. And yeah, we're growing into some of the woo-woo crazy multidimensional stuff in order to make that normal, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
so it can be a bit, you know, scary in some ways, but we have a safe, yeah, like you said, you're safe. We have a safe group, and all the people who will be watching this are going to be super supportive of this journey too. So I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. And who would like to go next?
I'm happy to.
Okay, go ahead, Kim.
So thank you, Emily, so much. And so really wonderful to hear everybody else too. It's a very similar journey. So I started as an educational therapist about 26 years ago. I had no idea what that was. I knew I liked psychology. I knew I loved working with kids. And educational therapy at the time was about marrying those two things. It was working with kids and how they learned, and helping at that time, kids that were diagnosed with what was called learning disabilities, to help them in the school system and to help them feel successful. So I was originally trained in a lot of programs to help with things like dyslexia, nonverbal learning difficulties, all the labels we have, and language-based programs, dysgraphia, all of those things.
Sorry,
And
Kim. Can I?
Yes.
There's some sort of noise in the background. I don't know if it's coming from your microphone or whose microphone, but just it's a little bit distracting. So.
Yeah, can you hear mine? I've been hearing it too for a little bit.
It might be from yours. I'm not sure. Okay, it's fine now, but it seems to be when you're talking. I don't know.
Okay, if I keep talking, do you hear it?
Yeah, it's coming from, yeah.
Let's see. Let me have somebody else go ahead and let me see if I can switch out. Oh yeah, I can hear it.
Sounds like someone's like whispering in the background or something, doesn't it?
Yeah, can you hear it now? Can you hear it when I'm speaking right now? Okay, let me have somebody else go and I'm going to switch out my earpods. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, sorry to interrupt you there.
No problem. Thank you for letting me know.
Alex?
I can go next.
Okay, great.
All right. So I guess my journey is, I mean, there's a lot of similarities with Marisa and Judy that just went just before. Yeah. So, you know, I guess taking the journey in education and working with children, we all have a common ground, and that's the best interest of a child in all levels of development. When I first started as a new grad teacher, I had all these sort of idealisms, you know. In theory, it's so beautiful. You have the best classroom. You know, you're going to be able to meet all the needs of the children, all areas of development. My focus was really more about how to, you know, be in those stages of life of the developing child through different stages, and how do we bring the environment and the curriculum to them. As I went through, you know, my journey in teaching, I found that none of this was really happening. You know, in theory, it's a lot different than in application. And being intuitive myself and sensitive, I found that a lot of children weren't seen, heard, understood, and most of all, they weren't being held in a place so we can actually deliver what is necessary to them in their learning journey, in actually mentoring them. I didn't like the fact that we had to be instructional, that we have to tell them how to think, what to think, who to be, what to be. And this caused me a lot of anguish. So each day I would sort of go home and, you know, spend endless hours trying to think, how do I bring, you know, the concepts, the learning applications to all these little spirits that are also different, and they take it in also differently. But not only that, the environment wasn't also conducive to their learning. There were so many issues that I would sit back and observe and say, you know, the lighting, you know, the movement, you know, the spacing, the lack of nature or what it be in our environments was also very detrimental to their learning. So I went on to study working with children with special needs, and that whole area gave me such a deep yearning to change the system. And I found that, you know, before you even meet the child, you're already given the label up front before you're given the child and who this child is and, you know, what they represent, what their spirit is. And that I found really had all sorts of educators, parents, people, friends, the whole collective already predetermining who this person is without knowing the person, and able to see what's in there and what, you know, the capabilities were. And my time working with these children brought me more and more closer to understand that, you know, they're no different than what we call the mainstream children. They were just all individuals with various, whether we call them sensitivities, whether we call them star children, whatever sort of, you know, what context we want to put them in. for me, I saw them all as children in developmental stages of life. So whether they are mainstream or whether they are special, they all are in a certain stage of life that we need to be aware how to hold them, how to guide them, how to mentor them, and how to educate them. And that's what led me to sort of start my own environments where I thought I could sort of, work with Maria Montessori's work, being trained in it. I found her pedagogy was very, very, it resonated with me in terms of how I saw children, their development, and how they should be learning. And at that time, I thought I would take this pedagogy and work under it to sort of be able to work around the regulations, the rules, the bylaws, the government policies, and bring this holistic environment to, to life for children without having all these issues. And that's what sort of kept me going. And then I decided to take psychotherapy for the understanding of the inner child. So how, because it's all like, it is all interconnected. They are parallel to the adult that's guiding the child. So the closer we have our own inner child met, held, and seen, we could become stronger leaders, healers, and mentors to the generation behind us. So that's how, and that's the work I do now. And what's happening in this time right now with this whole COVID in education system, I think what, we're not seeing it right now, but the work you're doing too, Emily, and what we're all doing here is finally coming to surface. It actually has pushed it, sped it up, that we're going into conscious education right now, and we're going to be placed in settings. Our system is going to recognize individualized education, seeing these children on various dimensions, not just the physical.
Amazing.
And as a parent in Waldorf, I mean, I'll put that little part in, and Montessori, they are very similar, but for the reasons of Montessori's work stood strong and does stand strong in today's world in the 3D, and Steiner was more in the higher dimensions of the child. And these two long outstanding philosophies are finally also going to be seen and integrated right now, because we're going into all the dimensions, and that's why we are bringing these children forward, and that's why we're seeing them more, and that's why we're just talking of various levels of dimensions, and that's happening, and it's exciting. It's an exciting time.
Definitely.
So here we are. So that's it.
Amazing.
That's what's brought me here. Yeah.
Thank you, Alex.
You're welcome. Now, just one more question. Pardon my ignorance. So, do you want us to stay muted, right, when we're not talking?
It depends. If there's no noise in the background, it's totally, that's fine. But if there's any sort of feedback or anything, which I don't think there is, but
I'm
other
trying
than
to figure it out because I'm on my phone. So if it's very, very interruptive, just tell me. So I'm just going to fiddle with my buttons here.
Okay, cool. I'll let you know.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
So I don't know. I can't see Kim. I think she's still with us, but I guess she's not.
I'm still with you. I need to call in on my phone.
Oh, okay.
Not working. So sorry.
Okay, no problem. We'll get Hope going, and then you can jump in.
Right, thank you. It's so lovely to hear everybody. It's so inspiring, and I love how Emily set that up with the creating the geometric shape with the dialogue. I really feel and see that as well. So that's so beautiful. I sort of come from a little bit of a different place than the others, which is great, which is interesting. And I think sometimes we come to things through our own journey, through our own struggles, right? And when I'm an intuitive healer, and when I had my daughter 16 years ago, when she was young, I was studying with a spiritual teacher who is quite well known, and I would listen to him and listen to his talks and go to his events, and I just kept carrying the question but what about our kids? What about our kids? You know, I went through a profound awakening around that time and would see everyone else around me, you know, in this process. But like, who was holding our kids? What was I going to do with my 2-year-old, my 3-year-old that soon had to go to school? And we were all waking up, but I was going to send her into an environment that was not really aligned. So I really held that question and was with that very deeply. And I connected with a group, I think when my daughter was 3 years old, and was part of the development of a holistic model here, which has gone on to be a successful school in the public system. But then I ended up enrolling my daughter into a Waldorf school. We found a Waldorf school that was quite beautiful, and which was a lovely education. And she ended up staying in that model for, you know, 10 years, I guess, the kindergarten years and up until grade 8. And we felt very deeply supported by the philosophies and the approach, but yet also really, really saw the gaps, really saw where it didn't fully understand and meet the new generation of children. You know, there were those brilliant teachers who carried their own gifts, perhaps, and did, you know, those enlightened beings that are drawn to the model, because like Montessori, Waldorf and Montessori really are the leading holistic pedagogies out there. But yet Steiner's philosophies were from 100 years ago. And he himself, you know, would say, like, the children need to lead. Each new generation needs to lead. And our education needs to evolve. So I'm sure if he was here today, he would say, like, why has this not evolved? Like, yes, he had a lot of brilliance to share, but we are in a new time. You know, we are awakening, and our children are coming in with very high frequencies, you know, and are not fully understood. And I would see a class full of indigo kids or star kids, and the teachers didn't fully understand what was happening with the kids or where they were coming from. So I found myself the interpreter, often sitting in the classroom with the teacher, you know, as a healer and as someone that can hear the soul of a child or of anyone, or you know, and I'm telepathic. With my own child, I would be able to go in and see kind of what was going on and hold space for the kids, or be in the principal's office sharing, kind of trying to infuse. So that is where sort of my experience with education came from. So I did all this huge research when I was part of the holistic public school, and then all my years with Waldorf. And through that time, I also really carried a very strong vision of a new paradigm. And it's just like Alex has said, I really saw Montessori and Waldorf coming together. It's really the balance of the masculine and the feminine. You know, I see Montessori carrying kind of the divine masculine energy, very like 3D in the world, and Waldorf has kind of the etheric, more of the feminine. Both brilliant, but they're not in balance. So we're at a time in our greater world that we're coming into unity. We're coming into this sacred marriage of the two. And so in education, this needs to happen. And not only just bringing them together, but what wants to be birthed today? Like where are we taking it? So we build on it, and really understanding and seeing these awakened kids, you know, like who are they? And what do they really need? What are they asking for? And I love the dialogue, because I see that this is not going to be one person's vision. You know, the new paradigm must come from many paths, many, you know, it's the oneness, right? So it's many of us coming together to really birth the new. And it's exciting. I do feel like a couple have mentioned that this time is pushing us forward. You know, everything happening these last few months, we're having to relook at all our systems, all of our structures, right? And so now it just has to be education, right? And I think there's going to be a wake up. I mean, we've been looking with everything with the anti-racism movement, like they're almost like we're all sort of in shock that things have been going on that we didn't realize. And I feel like that moment in education needs to happen, where across the board we sort of look and think, like, what are we doing? You know, all the holes and all the, you know, the gaps, and where we're not fully meeting the potentiality that is there in our children. The light will get shone on it.
For sure, 100%.
Yeah.
And I love that we're talking about what that might look like. You know,
Yes.
like I'm interested in that conversation. Like, what might that look like? You know, like, because I think we all have seen the issues and, you know, the places where it's, you know, not up to par for the children. And so, yeah, I'd love to, and we will after we hear from Kim, but explore that, you know, where we're going and what that light might show us. So thank you. Are you finished, Hope, with your intro? Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
If you have anything else to say, you can add. Was there anything more?
I'm sure it'll come out in the dialogue.
Okay. Okay.
That's great. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Hope.
Thank you.
And Kim, you're back.
Okay, thank you so much. My son was my technical advisor. We tried several different earbuds. My computer speaker's not working, so
Oh, you sound a lot better
that
now.
could be why. Does that sound better?
Yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah, much
This is
better.
from my phone. Perfect.
Okay.
So sorry about that.
No problem.
So yeah. So anyways, I started out in a very traditional sort of background setting, and I always worked in hospitals or private practices, or I would go into schools or centers. And basically, you know, I was doing a lot of remediation and helping with all the reading programs, different things that would really work in different teaching modalities that, you know, every child was so different. And so it was really interesting when I was first starting out to see, like, oh, this child can read without any problem, and they just needed to be taught this way, or this child needed to just understand how to do this in a different way. But what was really disheartening for me was that so many of the kids I saw were so amazing and have these just really amazing gifts and amazing spirits and really unique qualities to bring forward, yet they were constantly being told something was wrong with them. They had the messages of lack and deficiency. And not only that, but a lot of times these kids were just had such in their hearts, and so many things that I needed to learn from them. And I believe things that they were here to share, you know, a lot of happiness and joy and fun, and like, why is this all work and no play, and where's the balance? And so the hardest part, it was these kids also ended up being the ones that had to work double time. And they not only had to go to school all day and struggle through school and not get the information, but then they had to go to someone like me after school. And a lot of the kids that we're talking about that are coming in with these, you know, different frequencies, not only did they need educational therapy, but oftentimes they're also going to speech therapy, occupational therapy, then psychotherapy for the difficulties they felt in not fitting in with their peers or the system. Difficulties at home with the parents because they didn't, you know, behave like a generation ago possibly thought they were supposed to behave. And so it was really sad. And in my own personal life, I was also, you know, I was very highly sensitive, very intuitive. And so for me, that looked like just fitting in and trying to get along, just trying to fit in with what I thought was normal. And so it's been a journey for me to help empower kids to want to be who they are, because I've had to step out and be more of who I am. That's been really a challenge. But along the way, I also had two kids, and my we also started out, I heard a lot about Waldorf today. So we also started out in the Waldorf system, which was such a beautiful system. And I loved so much about that system. But early on, my second child was having nothing to do with anything that was programmed, regulated, had any sort of control over the way he wanted to live his life. And by the time we were in 5th grade, I could not get him into school. And so it was an interesting personal journey too, to utilize all the programs that I thought would work, that I knew would work, to try every different way to try and approach how he could learn. And what I finally realized and had to give up was my control over how it had to look. And to recognize that each child is so unique and they each have their own path, and that when we honor and accept them for who they are and just love them and allow them to work towards their passions that come from within and not the external in or out, that's what creates that motivation and inspiration. And so that's kind of sort of where I'm in a different place. I still have my practice, but it's shifting now. Over the last few years, I kind of half my practice. I get to utilize a lot of different new modalities for parents that are open, and half my practice is more traditional. But for me, it mainly comes about acceptance of who we are and connection. And I can talk more about some of the different things I do later.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you. Thanks, Kim. I definitely want you to talk about some of the things that you do later, because I think it's so cool. And we also have another light language person on the call who I won't point out in case they want to remain secret. But there's 2 light. Okay. There's 2 light language. So Judy was super stoked to see that you do light language, because she's coming.
It's like, yay, Kim!
Yay!
Yeah, that's been starting, and I think that's part of why I was dealing with. Here it goes again. Because I keep asking in my head, is this going to be one of, because the voice in my head, I affectionately call it the voice in my head. Some might call it God, some might call it my higher wisdom, I call it spirit. And spirit has been sharing with me over the last several months that there will be times when I will be speaking in front of a group and I will be speaking light language. And so there's a part of me that's like, oh no, is it going to be today? Oh, awesome. Is it going to be today? But just to be knowing that we can even talk about it is so incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
Definitely. Well, yeah, definitely interested in hearing. I'm sure everyone else would want to hear more about how you work with kids, Kim, as well, with their specialized assessments that you do. Yeah, that's really interesting. So can get into that definitely in a little bit. Thank you all for sharing. So amazing to have you all here. And yeah, let's get into like the good stuff. Like what are we seeing for the future of education? What's coming down the pipelines? Like first of all, let's talk about, I know Alex has information on this, what's happening right now as a result of the COVID-19, and then on a larger, grander scale, using our kind of visionary abilities, what are we seeing for the future of education moving from this point? So does anyone want to jump off from there?
I can add to that.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I think we're still sort of, still sort of moving through it and trying to figure it out. The whole infrastructure is going to take quite a while, but what it's forcing us right now in the interim is, as we go back into the, into the school season, there are, a lot of discussions and regulations around small numbers, decreasing the sizes of the classrooms, potentially bringing, different age groups that will be in one classroom. So we're going to put grades together, we're going to split them. And all these are, sort of advancements in the system that, is going to look at a child individually. The virus is forcing us to make the physical space more conducive to being conscious over health. So, are we going to create, individual pods or classrooms where everybody has their individualized station, and then, creating that will allow us to create individualized observation and need of the child. So all these sort of new regulations are going to also allow the educators to sort of, awaken a little bit to, okay, well, how do we do this individually? How are we going to sort of wrap our minds around, it's going to take a while. There's a lot of, sort of things we need to iron out, but I think, it is definitely going to bring in a lot of attention to individualized needs. On what level, that's, to be determined, but we're moving towards that. And we're moving to more small classrooms, which will allow more connection, more community, more relationship. So that is the key thing, I think, number one, that we're able to move into, decreasing the volume and, allowing for those relationships to happen. The time that the teachers have, both in private and in public education, this time that the children were learning through, through Zoom or through, the internet, was allowing the teacher to actually, show an interest, tap in, what are you doing? How are you feeling today? So they're also looking at that piece. It's not just delivering the subject. It was also a time where they were allowed to connect with their students on a connection of, their social emotional being. How are you? Like, how are you going through this? How are we going to, and the fact that they sort of took the pressure off the marks, which I saw in my own children, which allowed the learning to take a whole other pathway. This is not about measurement. This is not about, skill. This is about what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. So I saw the positives in that, and I hope that's how we're going to, I pretty see that's where we're going. Higher education is coming in, and higher, we're going to cover all these dimensions. We're going to cover all these needs of the children, and we're going to look at, education on a whole other level. And we're not just going to be looking at the outside in. It's all going to be, how are we going to reach that soul? How are we going to meet those needs? And how do they learn? And we're not all going to need to learn in a traditional way, And I can go on, to what I think, the higher vision will be, and how we're going to move into bringing nature into our education. And I don't mean just plants and dirt. So I mean, it's gonna encompass Mother Earth in many ways.
Kind of like how it used to be.
Yeah, kind of how it used to be. They're the conscious learners are coming. We're gonna have connection to spirit. Spirit will be something they're gonna look at. It's just not gonna be what my math skills are like, or what my, or what, can I succeed in getting into this school because of my marks, or for whatever, they're going to understand what their purpose is from a younger stage of life. I think that's going to be so cared for and so nourished early, so this is happening, and they're asking for it right now. They're demanding it. They're coming in like light beings, and they want nothing but love and equality, serving their souls. So we're forced. We have no choice. Even the unawakened ones are being forced.
Bravo.
Here we are.
Yes.
Here we are. So
thank you for sharing that. It's amazing.
You're very welcome.
Judy, do you have something?
Yeah, please. When Kim was describing her child who, by 5th grade, you just couldn't get him out the door to go to school anymore. That's what I think you're talking about, Alex.
Yeah,
these kids, they know it has to be different. They're not putting up with this stuff anymore. And sometimes they do it in a very passive, quiet, more anxious looking way. And sometimes it's in a more demanding kind of way. But the bottom line is we're seeing more and more of these children who realize this is not acceptable, what is now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to add to that, what I'd like to see is bringing more awareness and more consciousness to parents, because I don't want to, what I have seen through my time with these children and the displayed behaviors is that we want to sort of numb that, you know, and we go into traditional therapies of medicating them or shutting that spirit down. But you know, what I'd like to see is that we take these children, we take these voices and bring them into, you know, into our awareness, and that starts with the parents. Yeah, right. So
the families that I work with, I mean, you know, let's be honest, it's a very small sample, and it's a somewhat skewed sample, but I've been so excited by people who have found me either via some kind of a recommendation or just went to the website, just to the internet and started searching. And I said, so why did you pick me? And they said, because you're looking at ways of addressing autism and ADHD and anxiety in a way that is more holistic, that is more looking at all the broad aspects of a child and not just medicated.
Right.
And so, yes, we have parents who are starting to see that possibility. We have kids who are, you know, in their own little gentle or not so gentle ways screaming for what they need.
Yes.
If I can back up one moment to what schools, you know, what this is going to look like in the schools.
Yes.
I wish I had the vision. I honestly wish I knew what it can and should look like. That's probably my biggest frustration right now through all this, is I've been looking at all the systems that needed to be shook and shaken and changed, but I wasn't always sure what it needed to look like. And boy, if we look around us, that's what's happening. All the systems are coming up for review.
Mm-hmm.
And right at the very beginning, it was medical and healthcare and insurances. And then right up in there, boom, 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 was education. And what was so disconcerting was in those early days, like for us in Michigan, the schools were closed 2 weeks before spring break, which gave 3 weeks with no school, with, you know, everybody was either under the can't think of the word.
Illusion?
They were pretending. The pretend assumption,
illusion.
the illusion,
Yes.
the pretend assumption that 3 weeks is going to do it and we can be back into normal world. Ha ha ha. But during those first couple weeks, I had a parent of a student client who's a teacher. I have teachers who are clients and so forth. And it was amazing to me how many were telling me there were some who their district had been working on this for the last months or a couple of years. You know, what would happen if? But there were some districts in Southeast Michigan that basically these teachers were told on Friday morning, I need to have 3 weeks of lesson plans on my desk in 2 hours, and they need to be virtual, from teachers who had no previous understanding of how to do virtual and Zoom and any of these things. And so what ended up happening was a lot of these kids got paperwork. The oldest fashion of education, busy work, was awful.
Yeah.
But then they had the week off of spring break, and then everybody started to work around, how do we do this differently? And now, as you probably know, the biggest problem is if you're in a district that's got social and economic means, you probably have a reasonably decent educational thing trying. But if you are in a marginalized community that struggles with access to computers and internet and Wi-Fi and so forth, and people have been amazing at coming out and bringing governmental bucks and donated dollars to take care of this, but there are still the haves and the have-nots. And I don't know that just having Zoom meetings are going to be the way that they've been doing it is going to be the best way. So Alex and the rest of us, I can't wait to see what it's going to look like. I think so much of this is we have to be careful. It's kind of that idea that when you're creating an intention, if you define it too strongly, too specifically, you might lose all the possibilities that are available to you because you've just boxed yourself in and haven't even looked at this whole amazing opportunity. But I'm waiting to hear what y'all think could be some really cool ideas of what education can look like, especially because this is probably going to look like this unique kind of schooling for the next year or 3.
Yeah. Great question. Well, I know that Alex mentioned something about more individualized classes and teaching styles and smaller classes and mixed ages. And I know Marisa, in your school that you created, that's kind of how you did things. So if you want to talk about that a little bit and just share how that had an impact and influence on the kids that you had.
Sure. I was smiling, Alex, the whole time that you were speaking. I was like, yes, yes. You know, when you said, I think first you said smaller classes, and I'm like, yeah, absolutely, because there's no way you can customize and individualize with 30, 32 kids, been there, done that, and it's impossible. So I was excited when I heard you say that, and it definitely can work because it was working. Like I said, what I did in my school was working as far as the delivery of the education. What didn't work was the financial.
Right.
So, and so if that's not an issue and these are the new ways of the system, then I can tell you, guarantee it works. So definitely smaller classes, not more than 15. I think 15 is max. And multi-age, when you mentioned multi-age, we had multi-age. And the reason I wanted multi-age was because I really believe, and get rid of the grades. When you said that, I was smiling too. I said to, when parents would come to look at our school, I said, I don't believe in ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. I mean, they're completely meaningless. They're just numbers and letters, and let's forget about that, right? And it just creates a lot of stress and anxiety. So we focused on just, I did some pre-assessments when the children would come in, but I was really clear with them that this was not a test that they could pass or fail. This was an opportunity for us to find out what they've already been taught and what they haven't. So I was taking it wasn't about them. I said, and the way we would say it, it was like, we don't want to teach you something you already know and waste your time. Your time is valuable. So it's always about honoring them. So it's like, we don't want to waste your time teaching you something you already know. So it's helpful for us to know what you haven't been taught so that we can start from there. And so I would have an idea of where they were academically when it came to reading, writing, and arithmetic, because those are kind of the main things. But then that's where we would customize and start with where they were at, because that's one of the things I struggled with in the public system. I remember when I was a grade 6 teacher, for example, I had 30 kids in my class, and their reading, writing, and arithmetic abilities ranged from grade 1 to grade 13, but I had to teach the grade 6 curriculum. And so I'm like juggling, trying to help the kids that are falling behind, through recess and lunch hours and after school. And then the kids that were really brilliant, like getting bored and trying to give them, extra stuff that they could do. It was insane, absolutely insane. And so, but when you have smaller classes, it can work. So we had multi-age, we had no grading. And the way you can customize and make it work is some people said, well, how can you do that? If you've got 15 kids in your class that are all at different levels in math because they're different ages and whatever. Well, how do you actually do that? Well, the way we structured it, right? Like how do you actually, a teacher can't stand up and teach 15 different math lessons or maybe 3 or 4, no, you can't do that. So we structured it in a way where the kids were given the teachers knew the kids really well. So basically they would plan for the day for the kids in terms of what they needed to complete by the end of the day. We wanted them to learn how to take responsibility and organize their own time. It's just like when you get a job, as an adult, your employer doesn't tell you what time of day you need to do everything. They don't say from 9 to 10, make calls, from 10 to 11, I want you to work on this report. They're like, you know what your job is and you need to get it done. And so the children would have their agenda for the day, but they decided when they were going to do what. So some kids were doing math in the morning, some were doing it in the afternoon. They're doing it at different times. They're reading at different times. They're working on different projects. But then they could schedule one-on-one time with the teacher. There was an area on the board if they needed some help for something. So it actually worked. It sounds crazy and insane. And if you were to walk and just kind of look at the classroom in session, it looked crazy and insane, but it worked because the kids were self-directed. You know, if they needed to lay on the floor and put their feet up on the desk while they were reading their book, you know, with their feet in the air, then so be it. As long as they weren't disturbing anybody, they could do what they needed to do for their own needs. So yeah, the multi-age works really well because it takes the stigma off of who's doing what. Like not everyone's doing something different. And I really emphasize with the children that we all have different gifts and talents, that we're not all going to be great at math. We're not all great at reading. We're not all great at writing. We're not all great at music. And that's totally okay. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. I think, Kim, you were the one that was talking about how kids start to feel like there's something wrong with them. And that was something that I really worked on with my students, because they were the kids that fell through the cracks in the system. They were the ones that were demoralized and, I was going to say dehumanized, because in a way maybe they were. But they really felt like they were stupid and capable and all of that. And they weren't. They were brilliant. But you
May I
wanted
add to that for a second?
Yeah, I can tell you on. I can
hear. I hear you, and I've seen it all, and I've been through all these emotions.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing to add to the multi-age group, you know, one of the things is that there is a certain level of expectation in skill, right, in a grade. And this is where we have the measurement of grades. So let's take, for example, you have a 10-year-old who, you know, missed that whole concept of seeing the patterning and evolution of numbers, because our math curriculum is horrible, but the actual, you know, beauty in patterning and math arithmetic is amazing. But children are not given the actual process of seeing it build sequentially, how numbers are built and how we can see it in multiple dimensions, right? And forms. And when you get a child who's not meeting those demands, they start to build defenses, and whatever they come out in, you know, it shuts the love for learning down, because they love to learn in any subject, in any area. It's fascinating, you know, but all these personalities, defenses start to grow, and then you have a classroom where you have these children, and we need to look at them developmentally, because there is no expectation of a 10-year-old that needs to know multiplication. It doesn't have to be that way. Okay, but you will get your 5-year-old that might have seen those patterns earlier on, which is okay. So if you have this cohesive classroom where everyone is supportive, loving, understanding through relationship, through spirit, then that 5-year-old's going to come and say, well, you know, in the essence of their energy, they're going to bring that 10-year-old backwards to that area of development where that 10-year-old won't feel threatened, but okay, yeah, I remember this. I remember skip counting or let's jump and hop. And there is a relationship there. And that is how we build on the concepts. So our systems don't allow for that, like you said, because we are, you know, and these little aspects that what you have done or what I have done is the gateway to hope. But we still have a lot of barriers to fight, right? A lot, right? And you know, and for me, you know, bringing it back to the question where you said, Judy, what are these models going to look like? Well, you know what? I foresee these children who have had these, you know, experiences, and we have to bring them back developmentally. I see these remedial programs coming to a place where sort of what Emily's creating, you know, we're going to have our people like Emily, like Hope, our healers, our shamans, our Reiki practitioners, our light language practitioners. They're all going to be in a community where they're going to bring these children in their development stage of life to be able to take this journey of their purposes.
I can just,
This is what I'm jumping ahead a bit, but this is what I see, because I can see visions. This is what I see the model as we move forward. And we're going to bring that forward with these children.
100%.
Yeah. So.
Hope, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Alex was saying. There's an amazing book by the author Joseph Chilton Pierce, who's written a number of books on children and spirituality. And his book is called From Magical Child to Magical Teen. And so my focus of late has really been around high school. And his whole premise essentially is that we go through 2 stages of development, from age up to age 15, which is the biological development, and then post-biological development, which is after age 15. And so he really felt at that age, post-biological development, was when youth were ready and open to something larger than themselves. So it was their esoteric nature. They were really looking for truth, divine truth, something greater than the self, the small self. And they needed to really connect to that. So that nature had actually set it up so that at age 15 and older, that is really when awakening, to your true nature and really blossoming into that needed to happen. And that if it doesn't happen, we come into sort of a despondency. We have this expectancy at that age for something. If you all kind of remember that age, like it's like you want something more for your life, right? You're kind of looking to connect to something. And if they're not held in that, like Alex was saying, with bringing in kind of wisdom holders, right? If they're not held in that, they connect to the greater culture, the false ideals of the greater culture, which is not, which is not healthy, which is dysfunctional. We always see our checked out teens, right? That aren't, or they attach to social media, or they attach in ways where they're not held in their natural blooming into their greater selves. So he really was an advocate for new education and for this to happen. So to really infuse this kind of consciousness into education. And, his focus was at that level, at high school. So I really feel it is the time where the actual structure, like looking at how we deliver the academics is, it's critical, right? The small class sizes, how are we communicating the core academics, but then how else are we holding them and who they are in the totality of their beings? Yeah. How are we seeing them in their soul nature? And it feels, how does this happen, right? I think Judy, many have mentioned like the struggling of what is this vision and how does this come together? And I really feel the call. It really feels strong, and maybe this is the platform to share it. But there are so many stunning spiritual teachers in our world right now. There's no shortage of content, right? There's no shortage of teachers right now, right? But again, like how are they? What are they giving to the kids? All right. So it feels like that wisdom has to get harnessed and gathered and brought forward to direct to our youth.
For sure.
So it's really the blend of the educators and also the spiritual leaders coming together to birth something new.
I love that vision. I love that vision. Yeah. Go ahead, Judy.
Hope, one of the things that I thought was just so amazing was in this time when graduation season was not as people would have expected it to be, and these amazing shows that were put on TV, on YouTube, or on the traditionals that everybody could watch. Class of 2020, Dear Class of 2020, and there was another one. And what amazed me was to watch, and what was so cool were these were leaders that I'm not familiar with. These were people that I don't know because I'm of a certain age. But these were clearly celebrities and people who would really resonate with the high schoolers and the college students, the 15 to 22. And it was so awesome to watch how they presented it with these just words of wisdom and advice and encouragement of the stuff that you're talking about that spoke to them. And I thought this would never have happened if not for COVID.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
that's the interesting part.
Amazing. I'd love to see some of them. I saw Obama speak, which was phenomenal. But yeah, I'd love to see some of the.
That was on the really long one, I think, the 4 hours and 4 3/4 that I never watched. I only saw like the first half hour of, but it was on all the major ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN. It was an hour show, and I have to try and remember the name of it. I don't think it was Dear Class of 2020. I think that's the more recent one.
Oh, I love that, because that really shows, again, it just shows how this is organically being called forward, right? Yeah.
But I have one more question, sort of follow-up. I'm going to have to check out this book by Joseph Chilton Pierce, Magical Child to Magical Teen, and how that 15 is when they kind of break out into that, I see something bigger than myself and I really need to understand and connect to it. I have a couple of clients. There's one little boy in particular. He's 9 now, but I started working with him when he was 7. I call him my magical child. He is so amazingly connected to everything energetic, to things that are outside this universe, outside everything we know. And he is that magical teen, but he was 7 at the time and he's 9 now. And so just a thought for us to be contemplating that even what you're bringing up about magical child to magical teen, even that's changing already.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I see
Thank
the
you.
same. I think maybe it's the starting point, right? Or, you know, to sort of bring it, and then those, because they can really voice and then bring it down. But absolutely, right, from kindergarten on, you know, these kids aren't fully being seen and understood and held, right, and all of who they are, and it needs to infuse. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I wanted to mention one thing, and then I want to ask Kim something. One thing that I learned from my last interview with Marisa was that one of the things that they did in their school was in the morning, I don't know, there's like some sound in the background. I don't know where that's coming from.
Should we all mute
Like
except the person
like
speaking and see what happens?
Yeah, maybe. That might be less distracting.
Otherwise, it's energy coming through and we can't do anything about it.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, one of the things that I learned from Marisa is that every morning when the kids would gather in the classroom, the teacher would check in, do like an emotional check-in with the children. And I love what Alex, you were saying about like teachers have now an opportunity to connect with the students where in the past they didn't. I think that's really important to like get to know your students on that level and how that influenced them in their day-to-day educational experience, and how that changed the course of what, like how they learned and how they developed. Like I remember you saying that like these kids are, you know, coming from other schools and they're the ones who fell through the cracks, and just to have that like every day, that emotional check-in with them, like you're telling them that you care about them. And from that point, like that really alters who they become and how they're able to show up in like on a day-to-day, you know, on a day-to-day level with their classrooms. And that really stuck with me. And I'm like a very like relationship oriented person, as I think maybe most women are. But I actually did that when I ran the camp last summer. I took that on, and I did that every morning with the kids. We'd sit in a circle, and I'd ask everyone to go around and just share like how they were feeling, what they, you know, got from the day before, what they were excited for or looking forward to for that day. And it was so beautiful. I could see them just like opening up and blooming and shining. And I remember a mother told me that she was asking her son, like, what did you learn from the camp, you know, experience that you were there? And he's a 10-year-old boy. And he said to her, I learned that other kids feel the same way that I feel. And that literally just melted me. And it was like, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because for me, that's like, if we can help other kids see that and feel like they're not alone with how they're experiencing life, like that to me is the foundation of a healthy development in life. So I love that you were doing that with your school, Marisa, and I think that that's such an important aspect to include our social emotional learning when it comes to the future of education. So Judy wanted to say something. For more on what Emily's talking about, learn about trauma-informed schools. Finally, that's a thing.
Can
Amazing.
I just jump in before Judy, just to comment on what you just said, Emily? Because
Yeah,
one of the
sure.
other aspects of that was really important was to give the students an opportunity to ask for what they needed. Because sometimes, for example, when they were sharing about where they were at, because the teacher needed to know where are they emotionally at the start of the day, because some of them might have had a really rough night. They might have had a fight with their parents on the way to school. Who knows? And that's going to impact their day. And so we encourage them to request, like, what you need. Like, and some of them would say, I don't want anybody to talk to me until recess. And so we learned how to respect the needs and the boundaries that the students had. So that was another part of it. So express how they feel, and then what do you need? How can we support you with where you're at? So it created that community support as well.
Amazing. That's so beautiful. Thank you for adding that. That's so great. And I think we all need to learn what works for the kids. And this is part of what we're doing, right? Is just envisioning what is effective and what's going to promote positive development and growth. So with that being said, I just wanted to go to Kim and ask Kim to share a little bit about, because we talked about more specialized, individual, customized learning. And I'd like to hear from you, Kim, and maybe if you want to share about the kind of assessments that you do with the kids that come to you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So I also wanted to just add about the school and what everyone was saying. For me, what I found with the kids is I can't imagine a learning system that doesn't involve self-love and self-connection, and connection to others, because I think it starts for a lot of these kids within, and then that's how it extends out. And I just wanted to mention that there's a school called Bridges Academy. It's in Los Angeles, but they are worldwide in a lot of scientific studies that they're doing on what is called the twice exceptional child, or 2E, which I think is a lot of these very different frequency kids that are coming in. And the 2E stands for highly gifted and learning differences. But the model they've created is a strength-based model. So they work through kids' passions and strengths, and they allow everyone to approach the subject matter in a way that is best for that child and aligns with their purpose and their passions. So I just wanted to add that. So the assessments that I've created are really looking at kids on a soul level, and they're understanding kind of what their overall path is in life, what energies they're bringing in. And also the part that I love the most is how they perceive and process the world around them. What is that unique lens that their sort of inner psyche processes, and how does that affect learning? And so what I've tried to create is curriculum for each child that takes into account who they are, what they're here to learn in life, and what they're here to express, so that they can really come towards expressing their purpose, and also fulfilling sort of their own mission, what their mission is. And it's not like I know exactly what that is, but I have the ability in these sort of assessments to look at it holistically. And of course they're going to fill it in, and they have their own unique life path. But I've really found that for parents and for educators, just by understanding, like just even having kids, every child interprets their parents completely different in different ways, or their family system in different ways. And that's the same thing I find with each of these kids. They're interpreting their world through their own unique way. And they may need help in different sorts of curriculum in understanding how to have more breadth and integration for themselves. I don't know if I'm explaining it as well, but it's basically an individualized curriculum that's very specific to each child, and it's based on a soul level. That makes sense.
Yeah.
May I add to that for a
Yeah.
second?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it's, Kim, it's a bit of everything that we just collectively spoke about. You've individualized it into a tool. You've designed it into a tool.
Yeah.
It's exactly what, we're sort of all sharing here today. And that is sort of going back to, how Marisa spoke of the physical environment. You spoke of the individualized assessment, and Judy spoke a little bit about, the remedial therapeutic models. What's that going to look like? And Hope gave us, the insight of, what are new educators, teachers going to look like? They're not the traditional teachers. They are mentors. They're here to guide these children on a whole other level, and the levels will encompass all the dimensions. So I think it's an interesting collective here. We've all have sort of each piece, I think we have,
Yeah.
I think in actual fact, we all spoke today about what, the actual future is coming to, what it's going to look like. We're going to see these assessments. We're going to see these environments. We're going to see these new leaders,
Definitely.
So, yeah, definitely. And somewhere in there, we're going to have these children speaking light language at a very young age.
I can share a great story about that. I think I shared it with Emily, in that I have a 12-year-old who has really, she's been labeled severely dyslexic in our school systems, and her parents have tried everything, and she's gone to special schools, and she's just this amazing, beautiful, wise, little girl. And I started doing light language, and she would draw while I would do light language. And she just started writing light language. No problem. So different from how hard it is for her to form like a linear alphabet. The light language just started coming out of her, and then she just started channeling, visions for Earth. And it was really a beautiful experience just to see her feel so empowered in her ability to allow her innate wisdom to flow. It's really very beautiful.
That's amazing.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, I know of one woman in my parenting collective whose daughter is 5 or 6 now, and she has no interest in learning how to read or write, but she's super, super connected to, the galaxy and the other worlds. And I feel like it's because of that exact thing. Like then, and there's, I think she may have been diagnosed with dyslexia, but there is something there is something else that wants to come forward and that wants to be birthed from that place. And I find that fascinating, that like they're literally coming in with zero desire to learn the typical ways that we read and write, with English, and that they are just they have these different capabilities and abilities, and that maybe we just need somebody to offer them this opportunity to learn how to explore that for themselves, and to really tune in and connect to their innate gifts and wisdom, and allow that to shine outward, and that becomes the gift to humanity. And of course, down the line, when they're challenged by not being able to read or write English, they'll learn that, of course, but at these moments in their lives, maybe it is more powerful for them to have that opportunity to learn and tap into and to share these alternative ways of communicating and connecting. So thank you for that story. It's beautiful.
If I can please offer 2 small possibilities too.
Sure.
Is sometimes we need to give these kids permission to realize that, yes, it's that validating piece. I understand that you are here for a greater purpose. And I wonder if maybe you're afraid, if you start to do some of these more traditional things that you watch the rest of us do, you know, and sometimes I, you know, call us the 3D version of ourselves versus the higher, you know, and if you start doing too many of these 3D things, that you're going to lose these other things that you know are so important and are the gift. And so might we just consider, I'll say to the kid, might we just consider that you don't have to have one versus the other, but that you can have both. And actually, by knowing how to do these 3D things of reading and writing, you know, it actually helps you to be able to communicate stuff with the rest of the 3D people, because this wonderful, amazing stuff that you have for us maybe will be shared in that way. And that kind of a validation sort of twist. The other thing that I want to make sure that people know is, especially, and it's interesting with us not being in the schools as much in the future, at least in the near future, although a lot of the kids are going to be in hybrid programs for a while. Hybrid meaning part home, part in the buildings, is to remember that for these really sensory kids, one of the most challenging things that we put in their space, and I heard somebody, Marisa, I think, mentioned it at the very beginning, lighting, fluorescent lights.
Yeah.
I tell educators and parents, if you remember one thing, get rid of your fluorescent lights. If you can just replace all those, turn off your lights and use natural lighting, or turn them off and go to garage sales and buy El Cheapo, but don't get the curly Q bulbs, because those are CFLs, compact fluorescents. But the ballast, the sound is very challenging on an auditory basis for our sensitive kids. And visually, it literally does create distortions. It's not just these high frequency kids, unless these all were before coming in, but there's research to show that it creates distortions and distractions, and it's a piece of the puzzle with ADHD and distractibility and anxiety, as well as aspects of dyslexia, or what we call dyslexia.
Yeah. Thank you for adding that, Judy. I totally agree with that and support that 100%. I find them to be obnoxious myself. So imagining kids sitting in classrooms with other kids with these lights going on is just, I totally agree. And
may I add to that too, Judy?
Please, Alex.
Through the years of observation, I completely agree. I've seen the various behaviors, and just sort of with my own anecdotal observations, which we have in our environments, we don't turn on the lights. We go with the natural light from the outside. And we do have a lot of salt lamps everywhere. And we do allow those children who get completely overstimulated to go find their place, because we have what we call a peace corner, a meditative corner, where there's water sounds and there's various things that they need to go there to decompress when they feel they need the time out. But you know, it's the lighting has a huge effect, and especially, I mean, particularly I've seen with the children with ADHD myself. And diet is a big thing, how they come in and what actually goes into their little bodies in the beginning of the day, or what doesn't go into their bodies to allow for that, you know, natural rhythm of the body to start, or waking up the brain. So and these lights have a massive impact on the way these children can focus in their behaviors, and they can't tell what's going on. But look at us as adults. I mean, I get irritable when those lights are around me, or I feel the sensitivities, you know. So, you know, there's a lot in the environments that we have to reconsider. And, you know, even moving forward to developing and designing them, we have to take all these things into account. Right? You know, we need a lot of movement, like economy, a movement, or a place to sort of be able to have that inner peace where we want to go and relax. Well, when all these children are all put in one room with all this variations of energies, we tend to see the ones that withdraw quicker, but then we tend to label them quicker, right? They're the ones that can't comply, or you know, their resistance is not, you know, built strong enough to be able to resist these things. So it's taking all those things into consideration. And again, that comes with, small environments, individualized attention, and understanding the variations of the needs. And I think it all comes down to development. Like, when you're talking about reading, Emily, reading really for comprehension in a developmental aspect doesn't happen till they're 8 or 9. Right? But we want to train them as early as 3. And that's what we do. We train them. We train them, we prompt them, and it's all due to memorization. One of the biggest things that our environments are very popular for, meaning ours, meaning Montessori, is a child will be learning how to read at the age of 3, but really it's all phonetic. It's schemas. It's associating their senses to the sound. But parents are like, oh, my child is reading. Yeah, they're reading phonetically. They're reading through their senses, right? And we have these expectations of these children, but there isn't a time mark, because it's how the soul wants to take in the information at what point in time. But again, we have a certain chronological stage and systems that we want them in, and that's that's where evolution has to happen, and that sort of is happening with, I guess, people like Kim, who's designed this model here of measurement in terms of their assessments. I mean, that's amazing. I would love to see that. If you don't mind, right? But we need more of this, so we are able to bring out these gifts in all these children and understand them.
Definitely.
Yeah. But going back, I tend to go off on many different avenues, but that fluorescent light is not a good one for children. You're right.
Definitely.
And we walk into these buildings and we don't seem to care. And the air quality is another thing. But anyway. Yeah.
I mean, we could talk a lot about that.
We can talk forever.
I feel like what I want to add to that is just like how being surrounded by beauty nurtures us on such a deep level, because beauty to me signifies like the divine perfection. It's like it's a perfect geometrical structure or form, and that's engaging and interacting with us on a deep level, and so to be surrounded by beauty, it nourishes us on such a deep level. And I feel like we need to it sounds so simple, or maybe like not that important, but when we all know that when we're like around a rose bush, or like orchids or something beautiful like a skyline or something like that, like there's something within us that it just like brings to life, and it does become this interaction. And I feel like we need to emphasize the importance of that more in environments with children, because children are very obviously connected to that and sensitive to that as well. So they will notice that, and that will help to nourish their beings for growth and development as well. I just want to add that. So we're coming up on the 2-hour mark. It's 4:44.
Oh, wow.
What?
Okay.
So I really appreciate all of your contributions. Does anyone else want to add one last thing before we I'll put it to any participants who are on who might have a question, but if anyone else wants to add something, if not, then we can go directly to that. All right, great. So I guess I'll ask our participants who are on mute if you wanted to come off mute and ask any questions. You're welcome to do so now. And if not, that is also okay.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. It's Rita.
We can't see you. I don't know if you want us to. Yeah.
My camera's off.
You don't have to put it on, but I'm just.
It's awful.
Okay.
Hi there. It was so lovely to listen to all of you. So inspiring. I guess right now, what's coming to me is my awareness of heart coherence. And I wonder if any of you can speak to that in relation to what you're doing, and if that is something that has resonated with your awareness of the vision of education in the future, because it's definitely something that I'm sitting with a lot in myself, in my growth, and my awareness of something that needs to be birthed in education as well. So that's sort of all I got.
That's great. Thanks, Rita.
Okay, I'm gonna mute myself.
Okay.
I can talk about something that's out there that's a modality that I use. If you'd like to hear that. Well, one thing what I've noticed about our educational system is it's so mind-based. And I think like Alex was saying, and everybody said, you know, there's so much memory attached to it that getting into the heart coherence, I've been trying to like find different modalities that work with kids. And one of the things is called the ICU Academy. It's teaching kids, they're blindfolded, and they learn to work with their energy centers. And they do fun things like you can read, play games, throw a ball, do any kind of schoolwork, anything, but it really helps them tune in and attune to their own energy centers and get into that and recognize their own heart, because we talk about the heart light and that light's coming out, and then they're able to see with the blindfold on using their energy centers. So that's just something everyone could look up as ICU Academy. I find it to be really a beautiful modality.
Great.
Mhm.
Recently, I was doing my own work, and in Journey, I was sorting something out, and I was directed that, you know, for so long, we've always been taught, what does your gut tell you? What does your gut say? And the new instruction that I was given that day was, that's not as accurate as what does your heart tell you? Go into your heart space and feel that, rather than going down to your gut and using that as your intuitive mirror. This is brand new for me. This was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And within the week, I had an opportunity working with, if I'm remembering the right client, I think she's 15, 16. And she was sorting something out and it felt right. And I talked to her about, the trick is go to where your heart is. And it actually really resonated for her. And I thought, we might actually be onto something. And again, looking at these shifts that are occurring as we move through into this new earth, new way of being. And I just thought that was really interesting. So I throw that out there in case there's value to that.
Amazing.
Yeah, I love that question, because I feel like it brings it all together. Like everything that we talked about in the last 2 hours, because the heart is, you know, is the center, right? To like is the and is the connection of the above and the below, and all, like everything that we're looking to bring, and where we need to really be delivering education from. Right? It's like that total balance. You have to have them love education, love to learn, and love themselves, you know, and come from the heart. So it really is, it really is the center of all of it. It is the way forward.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The 0 point.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah, it's
for
beautiful.
saying that.
Yeah, so I feel like you're tapping into, like, this is where we need to go. This is the vibration, right? If we look at it as a frequency.
Yeah,
Right?
and I've also felt really drawn to understand how we can nurture the educators, because there are so many educators out there that can sense that something is shifting. And
Yeah.
I've always really felt like there's a big need to find ways to reach the educators and nurture them, and help hold them in their transformation, so that we can, because there's this massive group of people that have so much wisdom, and maybe they're just remembering, and I think that the community that is kind of already knowing and holding space, figuring that out to me is is somewhere where I'm drawn to, is like, how are we going to nurture this to be held by this community that's already exists in some
Right.
degree, right?
Yeah.
Good question, Rita. It's important.
I think, yeah.
They're getting it, Rita.
Yeah.
It's small, it's slow, and yet it's profound. When I go and I speak to educators, and one of my signature is there are no lazy students, which is really academic and very educational, but I talk about sensitives and looking at things differently. But the other one, which is more broad, understanding sensitives to understand autism, ADHD, and anxiety through a different lens. And I get so many educators who will come to that and who get it at this amazing, they start talking about what they're doing and how they make these things happen in their classrooms. And the other cool thing is I've been out of the schools now for 11, 12 years, I guess. And what I could get away with is so minimal to what they're giving away with now. They're really stepping into meditation and mindfulness and talking about feelings like Marisa, you were describing about kids coming in. And also this piece of trauma-informed schools, because everything that they're working with teachers now in more and more educational settings, especially the ones who most need it, are looking at how to support kids who come from trauma environments. But what's really interesting is, as I worked with, particularly as I started attending trauma conferences and realized that when I'm learning about trauma with the big T trauma, the ones we think about like accident, illness, assault. But then I started looking at these sensitives, particularly autistics, but really any sensitives. We have been dealing with little T traumas ongoing, this constant input of the five senses, including the emotions of self and others and energy and everything else, plus what's going on internally. Alex, you mentioned about nutrition and what's happening internally in the body. And so we've got all these kids and adults who are dealing with the little T traumas. So now that we're starting to talk about trauma-informed schools and how to support the teachers and support the kids, it does help everybody, which is so incredibly exciting.
Definitely. Oh my gosh, we have a long ways to go, I think, in like really grasping that concept and dealing with that appropriately. So thanks for bringing that up.
Well, if we don't nurture the mentors or the educators first, it's hard, because it's the children are all relying on their energy, on their ability to deliver for that day. So, one of my sayings to my teachers is, you kind of leave your luggage at the door, leave all that energy, sort of packed in the luggage. And when you come in with pure energy, clear. So we all do have the ritual in the school, children and educators, where we do sage and, use Santo Paulo. We've had a few incidents with the fire departments coming out. But, these little practices do help. These little, like you going back to what you're talking about, Emily, about setting the environment, setting the stage, to have care of the environment, which will then lead into care of self, is very important to children. And these little details and these little areas of understanding, their place in space and how do they move in this environment and what they contribute. This is all part of the connection of opening the heart, of coming from a place of, that energy where we are all interconnected in a very energetic way. So if we don't come into that space with love, with caring, with compassion, or however we want to describe it, having that frequency, that vibration, it's gonna affect everybody. It's a ripple effect. Someone comes in that day with a lot of various energies that they can't seem to settle, and whether it's a child coming out of a weekend where there was a lot of turmoil in the home or whatever happened, it's going to set off the tone for the rest of the children.
For
Then the
sure.
teacher's extra sensitive. She becomes reactive. So nobody's really addressing what's happening here. We're all going into flight mode and we're all attacking each other, you know, and this is sort of what we see in our environments. And, you know, how do we go there? How do we build all that? I think it is an interesting question that Rita asked. It's all coming from the heart. It's heart centered.
I believe that.
I wanted to add a little, sorry, were you finished, Alex?
Yes, I'm finished.
Oh,
Yes.
To Rita's question, there's 2 conferences that I went to last year and this year. It's I was trying to look it up, called Learning in the Brain, I believe, conferences, and they're all over the country in the United States, and they may go international at sometimes too. But the last one I went to in February, the subject was anxiety in education and how to educate an anxious brain. And the one prior was empathy in education. And so it was filled with, this past one was sold out, 2,800 teachers. So
Wow.
it was a great resource for teachers to really, and all the teachers that were there were all saying the same thing and seeing the same thing. And there was a lot of great speakers and breakout speakers that you could listen to. So that's a great resource for teachers as far,
Okay.
and the science is starting to kind of catch up with what we're seeing.
Mm,
Great.
great. Amazing.
Hi, this is Kayla. I've been listening. You guys are amazing. I've got a couple of hats on in my life. I'm a intervention specialist and work at a day treatment center for troubled youth, emotionally and behaviorally. So all the trauma-informed information, it's just so right on. And then who are these kids that are experiencing that trauma, but who are they underneath that as these sensitives, and how they've been misperceived, perhaps, has been a fascinating shift in my own mainstream teaching. And then I'm working with a group of conscious youth that are spiritually gifted, and at this point really interested in how this new paradigm in education is changing. But everything that was just said now with the head knowing versus the heart knowing, realizing some of these younger kids are more in tune with that heart knowing than I know I ever was. Or is it just because of the shorter life on this planet that they're still more in touch with it and haven't been deprogrammed out of paying attention to that? Is pretty neat. But my question, I guess, is there any kind of contact information for all of you if there's any questions or follow-up that I'd love to pursue? I mean, you have such knowledge and experience that it's amazing. I just am so glad. Thank you, Emily, for putting this on.
My pleasure, Kayla. Thanks for joining. I can definitely collect the contact information, and I'm not sure if I'll post it publicly. It's up to you guys, but
Maybe not. Yeah, that's never good.
I can definitely send it to you. I know we're connected.
I
on
mean, if
Facebook,
everybody
so.
doesn't mind. I mean, I don't want to make any presumptions, but it's
Yeah, I think everybody pretty much has a public
Mhm.
profile for the most part, and those who don't, I'll get their permission, but I'll definitely, I can definitely connect you for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for being with us and for sharing your question and just being a support.
Yeah, it's just so nice to see this movement. And as educators are awakening in their personal life, it's, you have to pass it on to your own classrooms and kids, just because it's, it's so important. But it's funny because it's these kids that are awakening the parents. And at the same time, they're awakening the educators to say, hey, what's happening in my classroom? And that's, talk about mission and purpose of these kids. They've got a rough one because we're not that easy to awaken.
That's so true.
So true.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kayla, for your question and your participation. And I guess let's wrap it up. It's 5 o'clock. And I know you guys all have things to do. So I was going to just invite Judy, if you wanted to do like a minute or so of your light language with all of us. Is everyone good for?
You pick me? Kim is the
around
one
for
who
that?
does this for a living and you pick me?
I like inviting people outside of their comfort zone. Anyway, you can say no, but I'm just offering that opportunity for you.
I'm getting a no.
Okay.
But I was hoping to reach out to Kim and say, in light of the fact that Emily is trying to create this energetic grid here.
Yes, that's exactly what I was
Do
thinking.
you have some light language that you wanted to share? Lord knows I might have a reply. Sometimes that happens.
I'm happy to share contact information and we can share together. Is that what you mean, or you want me to share it?
I was just thinking that
Yeah.
it might be nice to close the call with like a little light language session, or not a session, but just
Sure.
like a little something. I don't know.
Okay.
what to call it.
Okay. And I have not done it publicly either, so we'll see how this goes. So I guess just everyone, just thank you, Emily, too. Thank you to everyone. I learned so much. It was
Thank you,
really
lady.
amazing to be on this call. Thank you so much. And sorry for my technology difficulties. So we'll just close your eyes, and if everyone can come into their heart center, take a deep breath. And I'm just going to ask to transmit a light language that's in the highest good for everyone on this call that's listening. And you can just receive. Akaria alasana oria me era kana era situkuria me eshtikaria no oria me er kania shitu. Area no oria me ekeria shana koria me estaria kana arashikuria me er la kania situkuria. Er la taria shinakuria. Yatara o nia karia sana arashinuku me er la karia me er kanututuria. Yo notoria shana karia sinu esh tutu oria ma ea shana kai. Yo no kuria me ea natara arashinu kuria. Ya naturo kuria me ea kanara setu e. Yo no kuria shana arasanea ka aita. Iako oria shine ea yela karia sinu kuria. Yo ndiria karia sana arashinu unia ka aya sane ea kanshataria kanu otia. Yane ea shtunu kuria me ea karia senoko o shtana. Let's take a deep breath in. Thank you.
May I add a little bit?
Thank you.
Wow, thank you.
Lea o lea choka, lea poa chike o ea o lea toa sopa lea, fole chika hoa me.
Beautiful. Wow. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you, Emily.
That was a perfect way
Yes.
to end the call.
Yes.
And I trust that was a perfect summary of all the energy that we created together, and that's going to be a beautiful blessing and ripple out into the world. So appreciative of that. Thank you. That was beautiful. And enjoy the rest of your day, ladies. Thank you. And we'll see if we can do this again another time, and we'll see what comes down the pipe for the next steps in education. So thanks everybody for tuning in.